Hey guys, welcome to Slide into DM. It's Idelio here once again, and this time I'm bringing you something that I recently made a video of, which was the Spark Chemist loop. So I got a little too excited of it. So here I have a built sample list for the said loop. So how the deck kind of originated itself was me wanting to make a list, or rather find out a combo that uses Spark Chemist to infinitely loop and win the game on the spot. So naturally the most uh, obvious, or rather the easiest option, was Slash Charger due to its cheap mana cost and it being the best card for the list because of the combo otherwise also needing the Essence Elves. So it was kind of a natural thing there. Also, Slash Charger is just super solid card on its own, especially if playing against decks that are 40 cards. So you can essentially get out your opponent's win condition and get information of their hand and shields if you know what kind of a list they're playing. Or alternatively, if you're playing some recursion of your own, you can, for example, go Slash Charger, get yourself a Cranium Clamp into your graveyard, next turn follow it up with a Phalig and then cast the Clamp, or the options are limitless. Anyway, so I wanted to use Spark Chemist and make a fun deck for it. I've previously toyed around with a Darkness Nature list with Spark Chemist, and the main thing there was like using the cheap creatures that green has and Darkness in conjunction with Root Charger and Intense Evil and Mongrel Man. And well, actually it's a replacement effect, so I'll have to check the wording on Mongrel Man. I might have played that wrongly a long time ago. But anyways, the point was to like destroy our own cheap creatures, get a ton of mana, and then I would play a Headlong Giant on like turn 4 or something and just go from there. It wasn't too good of a strategy overall, but it was great fun to play. But here I have a more defined win, and I'm actually really eager to start playtesting this deck more. I think the core in the deck is pretty solid. I am still hesitant on the amount of cards for each slot I should be running, mainly because it's hard to balance the kind of bad combo pieces with like overall good cards and just finding the perfect balance there, but you'll see the sample list soon. So we want to use Spark Chemist to make an infinite deck out loop combo, which will win on the spot. The combo itself doesn't require too much mana, but it does require specific cards, so we'll need to have a good amount of draw and avenues to actually get the cards like out of the deck, whether it was into the mana zone or the shields, or you'll see soon. So let's dip right into the sample list. So I'm playing 3 Spark Chemist. I'll put them to the side, mainly because it's not in the mana curve right there. So we start off with 2 Black Feathers. If you watched the previous video, Black Feather is one of the combo creatures. The combo requires 1 of it, mainly to unlock the green mana for the combo when destroying, for example, a Poisonous Mushroom. I chose to put in 2, mainly for the redundancy, so that it's easier to find, because we're not playing deck search. You'll see soon why. And also it's an alright engine with Root Charger for additional ramp, but mainly it's a card that will go to the mana zone when we start off. Following up is 2 Tyrant Worms. These 2 are required in the combo, so in the first draft I had 3 of these, but I'll have to see how it shapes out because the card itself isn't that good here. It's only good when we're combining it with Root Charger or stuff like, well, Intense Evil, but we can do that to other creatures as well. So I'm currently playing 2, but we'll have to see if it is enough. Then we have 4 Poisonous Mushrooms. I covered this topic in the earlier video, but I think it is the perfect match here, and you'll see some cool curves in the coming section where I cover some basic curves the deck wants to do. So 2 mana creature, let us ramp for 1. We do lose a card from our hand, but it is optional, so you can technically just play this out if you want to, but we have some utilizations for the Poisonous Mushrooms ramp, mainly in the form of great 5-drops that are incrementally important to the strategy. So we're playing for mushrooms. In Finland we call it the temposieni, which means the tempo mushroom. So following up is another key card of the deck, which is for Essence Elves. The combo we play requires 2 of these out, so we'll want to have enough of them to actually find them, and on the other hand, this deck plays a fair amount of chargers and spells, so having essentially 3 mana chargers become fairy lives for 2 mana is pretty nice. So playing 4 of these, and in the worst case scenario, if we're trying to dig for the combo cards, we can just sacrifice some of our Essence Elves. Finally, our last 2-drop is a Spark Chemist. I'm currently playing 3, mainly because I think it's super vulnerable against opposing soul swaps. If our opponent swaps this out when we're not actually ready for it, it's going to be quite brutal, so we'll have to be mindful with the card, but I think 3 is the sweet spot because the combo requires 2, and we can also do some just value turns with Spark Chemist if we have Root Charger online. We follow up with 3 soul swaps. At first I was toying around with 4, but I think 4 was a little excessive here because we don't have too many high value targets for the soul swap, like stuff like Forbos or Fortress Shell, for example. So our main targets being in the 5 slot, you'll see them soon, but it's still a very good defensive trigger, and also it's actually a good removal spell here because this deck mostly plays low to the ground creatures, creatures that have 1000 power or 2000 power. So if an opponent has a Gaunt out, for example, it's going to be swinging for free, so then we have an additional avenue of swapping something out or using the swap for our own advantage. Notable also that this can fix some combo scenarios. For example, if we have a certain combo piece in the mana zone due to, for example, a Bronze Arm Tribe putting it there, we can save the scenario and cast the Soul swap out, for example, a Poisonous Mushroom out there, and we can start the combo off. So it works as kind of recursion also in the list. Then we have 4 beautiful Atari Bronze Arm Tribes, one of my favorite promos, mainly because it's so simple and elegant. Bronze Arm Tribe seems like the perfect card here, mainly because of its synergy with Soul Swap, and also the curve we are playing here, which is mostly reliant on going from 3 to 5 to 7. You might guess based on those numbers what the curve might be, but I'll show you guys more soon. Bronze Arm Tribe is also essentially a draw spell here, because as we are playing Spark Chemist and we're utilizing our own mana zone for our own advantage, casting Bronze Arm Tribe and getting the top card into our mana zone is very important here, because once we have the mana that we could start off comboing, even if we only have Spark Chemist in our hand, for example, we have the Root Charger and Tyrant Worm online, we can very likely just start comboing off there, because Bronze Arm has fed our mana zone, we might have the remaining combo pieces there, and then we can just go from there. So it has like additional synergy along with it being an efficient creature by ramping ourselves, and also just being a solid defensive creature, getting us to bigger mana and it trading to, for example, a Deadly Fighter Braidclaw. Following up, the next combo piece, Fevernuts. We could have also played Elfex, but I think Fevernuts is better here, simply because it's cheaper and it doesn't mess up our curve as much. I wanted to go for 3 of these. The combo only requires 1, but as we are mostly playing 2 mana creatures or 3 mana creatures, getting this engine online with one of our 5 drops, which will be Mist Rias, you'll see soon, we can enable ourselves to just spam and flood out the board, draw a ton of cards, and kind of just get ahead of the value, even if our opponent would benefit from the cost reduction. Notable that like super low to the ground rush decks won't benefit as much from it. Aggro decks probably benefit the most, or mid-rangey draw heavy lists which can just spam like Aqua Halcus for a cheap cost. So, but we'll have to see if this ends up being the final choice here, I do think that Elfx is another option. Oh, my camera seems to be frozen. I will have to double check if it is. Okay, it did not. I'm not sure if it froze there for a second, but let us hope it did not. So Fevernuts, a cheaper version of Elfx, and I want to playtest it here. Following up with another combo card in the list, which is the Mulch Charger. The most incremental card for the combo, but we only require one of those for the loop, so I put 2 in the list, mainly because it's already over 40 cards, and I want it to be as consistent as possible, but I'll have to tinker around with the card amounts, what ends up being the sweet spot. So Mulch Charger, instead of our creatures being put into the graveyard, they are put into the mana zone when they are destroyed, and it's a charger itself, so if we have an Essential Elf out, we can just use it to ramp ourselves 2 mana, gain a mana, so it's very solid. And something I like more about these chargers in conjunction with like Essence Elves and Poisonous Mushroom is that these cards kind of replace their own value, so instead of playing Fairy Life where you go 1 card down in hand, you end up with the Fairy Life in the graveyard. Mulch Charger and the other chargers will go into your mana zone, and for example with Spark Chemist we can just use the mana to our advantage. We can also just cast these without kind of, you know, spending cards in hand, if that makes sense. So playing 2 of these, but 3 might be solid as well. Hard to say at this point. Then we have 3 Mulch Chargers. Mulch Charger is another combo piece. The loop requires 2 of them. I chose to play 3 for the redundancy and also it being a solid ramp spell. Also with Poisonous Mushroom, things get pretty interesting with our 7-drop, so stay tuned for that for just a couple more minutes when we get into the later drops we have in the list. So Mulch Charger puts one of our creatures into the mana zone. It's a charger, so it's essentially ramps for 2 for the cost of 3, so very good ramp here, and also it will enable the combo loop, so it is necessary in the list. Then we follow up with 2 beautiful Slash Charger promos. Slash Charger is one of the combo cards in the list. I chose to play 2 just for the redundancy, and Slash Charger also on itself is a good card, and also it's darkness mana here in the list, so 2 seemed like the good choice. More would maybe dilute the list too much away from the combo pieces and the more important engines, so notable that Slash Charger, if we have the combo online but we are lacking Slash Charger, if we have Mysterias out, we can just draw our deck, because we can just keep looping the creatures without any other advantage, and then we can find the Slash Charger or Ghastly Drain for that matter, and then just get the Slash Charger and win on the spot, so 2 seems like the best thing here. I am playing 1 Ghastly Drain. Will allow us to take any number of our shields into our hand. We can't use shield triggers, but that's not important. So this is mostly a card against control matchups, and also in the scenario where our shields might have our combo pieces, we can just use the Ghastly Drain to get them out. Another fun card for the list, something that you don't see in many lists, is Intense Evil. So Intense Evil is a shield trigger and says destroy any number of your creatures, then draw that many cards. Something to note about this card is if we only had the unnerfed version that the Japanese game had, which has the same effect but you draw 2 for each creature you destroyed, it would be absolutely nuts in the list, because we can play a cheap creature, we can play a Poisonous Mushroom, and then we could follow up with one of the combos I will mention, or rather value engines in the list, which is playing Mulch Charger and combining it with Intense Evil, which will allow us to destroy, for example, 3 creatures, we gain 3 mana, and we draw 3 cards, or with the Japanese version we'd get 6 cards, and then we can just keep going with the 3 mana. If we get another Black Feather or Tyrant Worm, we can feed our mana zone more, and imagine this with the Mysterias out, we can just keep storming off, we can draw a lot of cards, gain a lot of mana, and then even maybe close out on the same turn with the Spark Chemist loop. Then a slot that I am not too sure of but I wanted to include light in this slot to have more cards that are of the color for our light drops. So I chose to go with Techno Totem here, mainly because it's efficient mana cost to power ratio. It curves out nicely with Poisonous Mushroom, and also just it being efficient. So for example, we could also go for stuff like Tyrant Worm, turn 2 pass, and then we could go for a soul swap if we want to. It kills Gonta, which is notable, and also Quixotic even if we are playing one creature out. So something that I've considered in place of this slot is Nariel also, which would stop everything of 3000 power and upwards from attacking. Our creatures could attack, so we could keep beating our opponent down if they have a Gonta or Quixotic out. They would have to not play creatures out if they wanted to swing with the Quixotic, but it would always trade for something, or it maybe couldn't even kill stuff like Spark Chemist or Tyrant Worm. So still, Techno Totem, I think it gives some more, leverages a bit more itself in the power, and gives our smaller bodies, like the 1000 creatures, when Techno Totem is tapped, they will trade, or rather kill, the opposing Aqua Halcus or other 2000 power creatures. Then we have probably the most important slot in the list, which is Mist Rias. Mist Rias is one of those cards that is very feast or famine. If Mist Rias sticks around for one turn, for example, if you've played this early out, for example, following with a Bronze Arm Tribe followed into Mist Rias, if your opponent doesn't have removal for it, very often it already gets so much value out of itself that it's too late for the opponent. So as you can see, we play a lot of ramp here. We get to higher mana pretty fast, so if we play out the Mist Rias and then we start churning through our creatures, we'll keep drawing a lot of cards, we'll keep charging mana, and we'll find the combo pieces, and then we can pivot into the Spark Chemist loop. I will cover more in the sample curves section just a bit later in the video, but for now, that's what I will say about the card. Then we play 4 Sky Swords. Sky Sword is one of those cards that often is called, or rather I myself also call it the Holy Trinity of cards, which would be Bronze Arm Tribe, Soul Swap, and Sky Sword. And there's a bit of a running joke that I've used, which is the recipe to a tournament winning deck is just include 4 Bronze Arm Tribes, 4 Soul Swaps, and 4 Sky Swords, and you can do whatever with the rest of the slots. Jokes aside, I went, as I mentioned, with 3 Soul Swaps here. I think more is too excessive, mainly because the good Soul Swap targets are the Sky Sword and the Mist Rias. So swapping Mist Rias out again after we have it, essentially it doesn't do anything with the Mist Rias, but with another creature it becomes a draw because we have the Mist Rias out. But with Sky Sword it's an absolutely good defensive tool and also a ramp tool just to get ahead of your opponent. So Sky Sword charges us 1 mana from our deck. I covered the principle of how it's beneficial, or rather extremely beneficial in this list with the Bronze Arm Tribe. So we get 1 card into the mana, and something notable is that the shield addition, if we end up putting our combo pieces to the shields, we do have the Ghastly Drain. If we end up putting the Ghastly Drain there, then we just have to hope and pray, but we'll have to, when you're playing this kind of a strategy, you have to consider some of your options here and there. So for example, with the Slash Chargers, we can check if our deck, or rather our shields, have the combo pieces, and then we just have to pivot into a beatdown plan, which this deck can actually do pretty well because we have the cheap creatures, we have a lot of ramp, and then we have this kind of efficient creatures that give us protection and also are pretty solid beaters. So Sky Sword, 4 in the list, completes our light mana, which will be 10 cards, which is not too much, but it's enough because our drops are so high mana, and mostly we want to soul swap them into play anyway, so I think the 10 light cards is the sweet spot, maybe with the addition of a couple. And finally, we round out the list with 3 Lost Souls. 3 might seem a little excessive when you look at other lists, but here, when we don't have stuff like a playset of Energy Stream, we don't have Logic Cubes currently, that is 1 card that I considered for the list, or stuff like Crystal Memory, or Phobos. We don't have that many avenues to kind of search for this, and also we don't want to slow down the tempo to cast the Lost Soul. So I decided to play 3 here, mainly for the redundancy, and then it being just basically a game-winning card in the list, especially against controls. So we want to win the Lost Soul race, and then we want to stabilize. Well, rather, we have stabilized then usually, and then we can get the Mysterias engine online and just draw a bunch of cards and pivot into the combo. So that's about it for the sample list. Some card considerations were Earth Reaper, which would be a solid fit with the 8 Beast Folks we have. Earth Reaper would allow us to regain some of our mana, which this list does get a lot of with the Poisonous Mushrooms, the Bronze Arm Tribes, the Chargers, the Sky Swords. So Earth Reaper also would kill the opposing Gonta, for example, or the Quixotic. So it's something that I am considering, but we'll have to see if I have any place for it. Zombie Carnival is another card that I considered, which I have this beautiful Japanese promo actually of, which would be some recursion for the list, mainly if an opponent uses a burst shot, kills some of our creatures, and then we don't have access to them anymore. But I think that is one of those game scenarios where we'll just have to kind of raise the clock. We will have to be mindful of what creatures we play out and just pivot our game plan accordingly. So if our opponent, for example, does go for a burst shot and we realize that we can't combo anymore, we'll just have to try the beatdown plan by swarming the board with Mysterias, for example. It's something that is also I've mentioned in my meltdown combo video, which is that in some scenarios you don't have the time to combo off. You don't either have enough time against an aggro deck, or you don't have enough time to just recard the cards and try to piece together the combo. So you might find yourself in a situation where you just have to go start swinging and just leverage your win probabilities that way. Nariel I mentioned briefly, and also Juliana is another tool that I was thinking to be defensive here, but I think it's a bit of a bricky card here because the list is also already pretty tight on the card slot, so adding another non-combo piece thing, I'm not too sure if it's good. Notable is that against aggro decks, maybe like mid-ranger decks, a bit slower decks, getting our shields broken is actually pretty beneficial for the list because we don't need that much mana to start comboing off. As we've mentioned in the combo video, we only need a 2 mana green creature out, along with the 2 Essence Elves and Fevernuts. Okay, this sounds quite a lot, but if we've built the board beforehand with these, starting the combo only requires the 2 mana green creature, it only requires Tyrant Worm, Root Charger, Spark Chemist, and even in the odd chance where we can actually just have these out already, we can just start comboing with the Root Charger and then the Spark Chemist. So maybe not the easiest task, but something to keep in mind. Dark Pact is also one of that I was considering, which would let us put our mana cards into the graveyard, draw cards to replace them, but I think the main point with it is that as a one-off, I'm not sure if it comes up often enough, and also in this list we'd rather not put cards into the graveyard because we can't recur them in the current shell, and I think adding too much recursion messes up with the combo plan and it makes this list function more as a dirtily mid-range deck that just like plays inefficient things out. Like we ramp a lot, but what do we do with it? We kind of play weaker creatures out and we don't get anywhere with it, so it doesn't directly advance our own win condition. So that's about it for the sample list. So coming up, I want to cover up the basic curves here, so I'm going to pick up these cards and I'll see you guys in just a minute. Moving on to the basic curves the list has, some of these are actually the kind of curves that I've been eager to playtest in other deck shells also, so I'm pretty happy to have made this list where I can actually play around with those curves and just like feel out the viability of them. So starting off is a spicy curve, probably my favorite curve here, something that I wanted to try elsewhere as well. The basic principle for the first two curves is turboing out the Lost Soul. On turn 2, we will play the Poisonous Mushroom. We will then put a card into our mana zone, so we'll be at 3 mana at the end of that turn. On turn 3, we will charge a card into the mana zone, so we are at 4 mana. We will use 3 of it to cast a Mulch Charger, and we will put the Poisonous Mushroom into the mana zone, so we will go from 4 mana to 6 mana. And then, on turn 4, we will charge a card into the mana zone, be at 7 mana, and then slam down the Lost Soul and discard our opponent's whole hand. We will also be at either 1 or 0 cards in hand with this curve, so it is not noteworthy that it is quite an all-in of a curve, but we have to consider that if we've charged any valuable creatures like Mysterias into the mana zone, we do have the option of, we will be at 7 mana, and our opponent on turn, if we are starting, our opponent will be at 3 mana. So consider the disadvantage, having no cards in hand and being at 3 mana, your opponent likely just charges mana and you'll have more time to draw into your engines, so we have the tempo advantage there. So that's the first curve, and then the more traditional Lost Soul curve is going for the turn 3 Bronze Arm Tribe, put the top card into our mana zone, going us to 4 mana. On the turn 4, we will be at 5 mana when we charge mana, so we will go for the Sky Sword, get a mana, get a shield, all that good jazz, and then on turn 5, we will go for the Lost Soul on curve, and this is more of a defensive, slower curve that doesn't waste cards in hand or board, so it's a bit more of a patient curve, but still it works wonders and is one of those curves that is played in very good decks or meta decks also, simply because the Bronze Arm Tribe and Sky Sword are super efficient creatures on their own, especially when combined with Soul Swap, and Lost Soul being a win condition against mid-ranger and control decks, so 2 ways to get the Lost Soul out very explosively. Also we can replace the other Sky Sword or whatever with the Soul Swap, just to Soul Swap the Bronze Arm Tribe again for the additional ramp if needed, so there are additional avenues, or just playing a Poisonous Mushroom alongside the Bronze Arm Tribe, so you get the idea. Our next curve is a bit of a cookie cutter curve, very simple, elegant, nothing too special here, but on turn 3, cast the Bronze Arm Tribe, put the top card into our mana zone, and on turn 4, play down the Mist Rias, and this, in the scenario our opponent doesn't have any removal for this. Also, if you've made the correct read that your opponent likely doesn't play, for example red, or your opponent doesn't play Miraculous Snare, you can quite safely play it out because your opponent will be at 4 or 5 mana on the following turn, and most of the removal is either 6 mana in the form of Terror Pits, 3 mana, which is the Miraculous Snare, but if your opponent is in not those colors or plays an aggro strategy, unless it's like Lightwater Aelzonius, he might not be, or they might not be playing that card, so you'll just have to read the situation accordingly, but still, a very solid curve, allows us to get the engine online. Aggro decks suffer against Mysterias because they just feed you so many cards, and then also if you get it to your turn with all the ramp we have, all the efficient small creatures we have, we can draw a bunch of cards and gain value. Then we have the other turbo strategy for the Mysterias, which is turn 2 Poisonous Mushroom. We will charge the top 1 card from our hand into the mana zone, and then on turn 3, notice turn 3, wow, we will put a card into our mana zone, which will likely be the Mysterias. We will be at 4 mana here, we will cast Soul Swap, we will swap the Poisonous Mushroom into our mana zone, and since we now have 5 cards in mana, we can get the Mysterias out. and getting Mysterias out on turn 3 is super explosive. If your opponent is just going for their turn and they're playing like Aqua Halcus, you already get to draw and you can just keep gaining tempo and keep gaining card advantage through the Mysterias. Something to note also is if we put this Soul Swap in conjunction with the Bronze Arm Tribe curve, we can very likely swap out the Bronze Arm Tribe out. So consider this scenario. We will be at 5 mana now. We will tap the 3 mana. We will swap the Bronze Arm out, put this in, and then we will have 3 mana left over, so we can play, for example, a Poisonous Mushroom into a Poisonous Mushroom, or a Bronze Arm Tribe, so we can gain instant value, which is more resilient against opposing removal, because we have already gained advantage of the Mysterias. So those are the basic curves for the deck, and something that I want to mention, I mentioned in the earlier section also, is the engine of Root Charger and Intense Evil once we've gotten the Mysterias out. So if we've gotten the Mysterias out and we want to follow on the next turn, we don't have to spend cards into the mana. We are at 5 mana, for example. If we've gone for the Poisonous Mushroom tempo curve, we likely don't have other creatures out, but something to mention is the Root Charger and Intense Evil combination, which essentially costs 5 mana because this is a charger, or with an Essence Elf out, this suddenly becomes only 1 mana and this becomes 2, so it's a 3 mana combination, mainly because of the charger. So the investment for these, you getting mana and you drawing cards, and when you play creatures out, you draw more cards, so it's something to keep in mind as a value engine in the list. So this list, I'm eager to playtest and see how it shapes out. I think the most vulnerable matchups for it, of course, is like Fire Nature Rush, which is also otherwise one of those decks that is kind of balancing the format and keeping it in check. But something to note about this deck specifically is that this deck is mostly built as an experiment, something that I want to make as competitive as possible, but I think since the combo pieces are so many and the combo pieces are not that strong on their own, aside from the Essence Elf and quite potentially the Chargers or Fevernuts actually with Mysterias out, so it's something that I want to try. I want to playtest this quite a lot. I want to tinker around with the deck slots, but like I think the deck build I made is actually pretty solid, and I'm really eager to playtest it out. So please do let me know. Slide into the comment section below and let me know what you think of the list. If you have any suggestions for it, anything, please let me know. This was Slide into DM. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.